On the outside, it looked like any other 1940 Ford coupe rolling off Detroit's assembly lines. But peek under the hood, and you'd find an ambulance engine that could outrun any police car in the county. Look in the trunk, and you'd discover suspension strong enough to haul 1,800 pounds of illegal moonshine. And behind the wheel, you'd find a driver with nerves of steel and a lead foot. They called these machines tankers, custom-built monsters designed for one purpose: to deliver illegal whiskey faster than the law could catch them. The men who drove them weren't just bootleggers. They were the pioneers of a new American sport. Their playground? The twisted back roads of Appalachia. Their legacy? NASCAR. Welcome to the true story of how America's favorite motorsport was born in the shadows of Prohibition, and how a group of outlaws changed racing forever. To understand this story, we need to travel back to 1920. Back to Prohibition. The government had banned alcohol, but they couldn't ban the American spirit. In the mountains of North Carolina, Georgia, and Tennessee, farmers who had been making moonshine for generations saw an opportunity. They were craftsmen who had perfected their art under the light of the moon, hence the name Moonshine. The poverty that gripped the region during these years was crushing, and families who had worked the same land for generations found themselves struggling to survive. Making moonshine wasn't just about breaking the law. It was about putting food on the table, keeping farms from foreclosure, and maintaining a sense of independence that had defined these mountain communities for generations. But making the moonshine was only half the battle. Getting it to thirsty customers in Atlanta, Charlotte, and beyond required something special. Skilled drivers who could outrun the law in modified cars that looked ordinary on the outside, but packed extraordinary power under the hood. These drivers were the elite of their era, men who could navigate treacherous mountain roads at breakneck speeds, often with their headlights off to avoid detection. In 1932, something happened that would change everything. Henry Ford, a strict teetotaler who ironically banned drinking among his workers, released what would become the bootlegger's best friend, the Ford V8. This car was a revolution on wheels. With its powerful 65-horsepower engine, the Ford V8 gave bootleggers the edge they desperately needed to stay ahead of the law. The transformation of these ordinary cars into moonshine-running machines was an art form in itself. Skilled mechanics worked in hidden garages deep in the woods, like the legendary Jerry Belly, whose secret garage near the North Carolina-Virginia state line operated for over 35 years. These shrewd mechanics would modify everything, from the suspension to the engine, creating vehicles that could carry heavy loads of moonshine while outrunning any police car on the road. The drivers became mechanical innovators, removing floorboards and back seats to store more moonshine, installing heavy-duty suspension springs to handle the weight, and souping up their engines to outrun any lawman's vehicle. Prohibition ended in 1933, and you might think the story ends there. But the spirit of competition that had been born on those mountain roads was just too strong to die. The same drivers who spent years outrunning federal agents began racing each other on weekends, first on public roads, then on makeshift dirt tracks carved out of pastures. The transition from illegal running to organized racing wasn't as big a leap as you might imagine. The skills required to navigate mountain roads at night with a full car of moonshine translated perfectly to the racetrack. These drivers had learned to handle their vehicles at extreme speeds, master tight turns, and maintain their cars under the most demanding conditions. Their years of evading the law had turned them into some of the most skilled drivers in America. The crowds came in droves, sometimes tens of thousands strong, to watch these legendary drivers showcase their skills in broad daylight. Among them was a man named Bill France, a mechanic who had moved to Daytona Beach, Florida to escape the Great Depression. France saw something in these races that others missed. He saw the future of American motorsports, the raw excitement, the skill of the drivers, and the passionate crowds all pointed to something bigger than just weekend entertainment. On December 14, 1947, Bill France gathered 35 men at the Streamline Hotel in Daytona Beach. These were the outlaws, mechanics, and promoters who had kept stock car racing alive through the lean years. The meeting took place in the hotel's rooftop bar, where the ocean breeze carried a scent of opportunity. Many of those present had deep ties to the illegal alcohol business, including Raymond Parks, a former moonshiner who would become one of NASCAR's founding fathers. The discussions lasted 4 days, and the debates were heated. These men had been competing against each other for years, both on and off the track. Now they were being asked to come together and create something bigger than themselves. The key issues were standardizing rules, ensuring fair pay for drivers, and creating a points system that would determine a true champion. When someone pointed out that their first choice for a name, the National Stock Car Racing Association, was already taken, it was Red Vote, known throughout the South as the Bootleggers mechanic, who suggested the name that would make history: NASCAR. The National Association for Stock Car Auto Racing was born, and with it, a new chapter in American motorsports history began. The first official NASCAR race was held on February 15, 1948, on the beaches of Daytona. The scene was electric. Thousands of spectators lined the beach road course, eager to witness the birth of a new era in racing. Fittingly, the winner was Red Byron, a former Moonshine runner, driving a modified Ford. The symbolism couldn't have been clearer. The outlaws had become athletes. The runners had become racers. Success came quickly. The first strictly stock race, held on June 19, 1949 at Charlotte Speedway in North Carolina, drew a massive crowd eager to see these legendary drivers compete. The transition from outlaws to legitimate racers was underway, but the skills and innovation that had been honed on moonshine runs remained at the heart of the sport. But the moonshine connection didn't end there. Even as NASCAR grew, many drivers kept one foot in each world. Take Junior Johnson, a future NASCAR legend who learned to drive while running moonshine as a teenager. Growing up, he had to climb over cases of illegal whiskey just to reach his bed at night. When federal agents raided his family farm in 1935, they seized over 7,000 gallons of moonshine, the largest inland seizure of illegal alcohol at the time. Junior Johnson, who would become one of NASCAR's biggest stars, continued running moonshine between races well into the 1950s. He wasn't alone. Curtis Turner, another NASCAR Hall of Famer, had started bootlegging at the age of 9. These men brought not just their driving skills to the sport, but also their mechanical knowledge and their fearless approach to racing. The Bootleggers didn't just contribute their driving skills to NASCAR. They brought their spirit of innovation that would forever change the face of automotive racing. Mechanical tricks they had developed to evade the law became the foundation for modern stock car racing technology. They weren't just making simple modifications. They were engineering masterpieces born of necessity and ingenuity. Some cars even had features that seemed straight out of a spy movie. Smoke screens that could be deployed at the push of a button. Oil slicks to make pursuit vehicles spin out. And even devices that could spread tacks on the road to puncture pursuing vehicles' tires. But beyond these dramatic additions, it was the fundamental improvements to engine power, suspension, and handling that would have the most lasting impact on racing technology. These innovations were necessary for their survival. As Edmund Fahey, a bootlegger from Spokane, Washington, wrote in his 1972 autobiography, the rum smuggler put his car through mechanical tests as tough as those devised by test drivers. They needed to be fast, but they also needed to be reliable. Breakdowns could mean the difference between freedom and imprisonment. As NASCAR grew through the 1950s and 60s, Bill France began to carefully distance the sport from its bootlegging roots. He saw the potential for something bigger, a family-friendly sport that could attract corporate sponsors and mainstream audiences. The changes were gradual, but deliberate. Corporate sponsorships began to appear on cars, professional teams replaced individual operators, and state-of-the-art facilities were built to replace the old dirt tracks. The sport began to attract a new generation of drivers who had never run Moonshine but brought their own brand of skill and daring to the track. By 1989, every NASCAR race was televised, and drivers who might have once been running from the law were now making appearances at the White House. The transformation was complete. NASCAR had evolved from an outlaw sport into a mainstream entertainment powerhouse. Today, NASCAR is a multi-billion-dollar industry, with millions of fans tuning in to watch each race. The days of moonshine runners might be gone, but their spirit lives on in every race, in every high-speed turn, and in every photo finish. The NASCAR Hall of Fame now proudly displays this heritage, including an authentic moonshine still, built by Junior Johnson himself. In a fitting tribute to his roots, Johnson's father's whiskey recipe is now legally available as Junior Johnson's Midnight Moon Carolina Moonshine. This isn't just about preserving history. It's about honoring the innovative spirit that gave birth to one of America's most popular sports. The same spirit of innovation that drove those early bootleggers continues to drive NASCAR today. While the technology has advanced far beyond what those early pioneers could have imagined, the fundamental elements remain the same: skill, courage, and the never-ending quest for speed. If you enjoyed this deep dive into NASCAR's bootlegging origins, don't forget to like and subscribe to Track Reaction for all the latest news on and off the track. And if these legendary bootleggers could see NASCAR today, what do you think they'd say about how their backwoods pursuit has transformed into a global phenomenon? Share your thoughts in the comments below.